Welcome back to BioView 160 Principles of Living Systems. I'm Ruth Reitzman, your instructor for the course, and in this episode we'll explore the diversity of the invertebrates, the animals without backbones. Let's get started. So what is an animal, and how are animals distinguished from other groups of organisms? Animals are grouped in the kingdom within the domain Eukarya, the domain that includes the eukaryotic organisms. All animals are multicellular. Animals are heterotrophic and must get an organic carbon source. They have to feed by some form of ingestion, as opposed to plants that can photosynthesize or fungi that can absorb nutrients. In addition, all animals have specialized tissues, such as muscle tissue and nervous tissue, that develop from embryonic layers. And animals primarily reproduce through sexual reproduction. All animals develop in a similar manner. An egg and sperm unite to form a zygote, and the zygote goes through several rounds of cell division to form a hollow ball of cells called a blastula. The blastula then folds in to form a gastrula that has two tissue layers, an inside layer called the endoderm and an outside layer called the ectoderm. In later development, a third layer called the mesoderm forms. All of the body parts and structures of an animal can be traced to these early embryonic layers. The ectoderm forms the skin and nervous system, the mesoderm forms the muscles and bones, and the endoderm forms organs such as liver, lungs, and the digestive system. The kingdom Animalia is divided into phyla based on several characteristics. These include tissue organization, if there are 1, 2, or 3 tissue layers, the body plan and symmetry, such as radial symmetry or bilateral symmetry, the body cavities, the developmental stages of the animal, and the molecular and genetic makeup of the organism. The animal kingdom can divide it into two major subgroups, the vertebrates, animals with backbones, and the invertebrates, animals without backbones. The invertebrates are the largest group of animals and make up over 95% of the known animal species. There are currently over 1.3 million known species of invertebrates, and there are certainly a lot of species that we have not yet identified. In this episode, we'll explore 8 of the representative groups of invertebrates. These are the sponges, the cnidarians or the jellies, the flatworms and tapeworms, the molluscs, the annelids or segmented worms, the arthropods, and the echinoderms. For each of the groups, we'll look at their distinguishing characteristics and a few notable examples. The simplest animals are in the phyla Porifera, the sponges. Sponges lack true tissues and can actually be thought of as an aggregate of cells, with each cell feeding separately. Sponges are found in both freshwater and marine environments. They serve important roles in the ecosystem by filtering and cleaning up the water supply. The inside of the sponge is lined with cells called choanocytes that filter particles that are then engulfed by phagocytosis. Sponges produce a variety of defensive molecules to protect themselves from pathogens. Some of these protective molecules may have potential use as antibiotics or anti-cancer drugs. The next phylum is the phylum Cnideria. Have you ever heard the term jellyfish? Actually, the so-called jellyfish are not fish at all. Rather, they are members of an invertebrate phylum called the Cnidarians. The Cnidarians have 2 tissue layers that are in a radially symmetrical body plan. Cnidarians also are known for their cnidocytes or stinging cells that they use to capture prey and for defense. Cnidarians can either be motile or in swimming, or in some species they are fixed or sessile organisms. The cnidarians include the hydras, the jellies, and the corals. The beautiful coral reefs that we are found throughout the tropical areas of the world are built by coral animals, members of the phylum Cnidaria. Corals have calcium carbonate skeletons and live in symbiotic relationships with photosynthetic algae. Because the coral relies on the photosynthesis activities of the algae, coral reefs are found in warm, shallow, clear waters. A coral reef is a complex ecosystem made of the corals, their algal partners, fish, and predator species such as sharks. The delicate ecological balance of a coral reef can be upset by overfishing, removal of the top predators, and water pollution, particularly sewage runoff from nearby coastal cities, and by increasing water temperatures. Coral reefs occupy less than 0.1% of the world's ocean surface, about half the area of France, yet they provide a home for 25% of all marine species. The amazing diversity of the coral reefs is being threatened by pollution and overfishing, resulting from a die-off in corals called coral bleaching. How can these ecosystems be restored and protected? Many researchers are looking into this problem, and one of this week's assignments will give you some links to agencies and research groups that are trying to solve this problem. Now we'll turn our attention to the phylum Platyhelminthes, the flatworms and tapeworms. This group of animals has three tissue layers and bilateral symmetry. The flatworms and tapeworms may be free-living, such as this beautiful marine flatworm, or they may be parasitic, meaning that they spend much of their life living in or on another animal. We'll take a close look at the parasitic flatworm in the genus Schistosoma. The flatworm Schistosoma mansoni is a parasite of humans found in tropical areas of the world. The schistosome is endemic to Asia, Africa, South America, and in North America it is found in Haiti, Cuba, and Puerto Rico. Schistosomiasis is one of the great neglected diseases of the world since it primarily affects people living in the poor, medically underserved areas of the world. How is this disease transmitted and how can it be prevented? The parasite goes through a complex life cycle involving an intermediate host, a water snail. People acquire infection by wading in the water where infected snails are found. The infected snail releases larvae that penetrate the skin and then travel to the veins around the intestine or urinary bladder. The adult worms grow and produce eggs. The eggs from the schistosome have spines that cause the blood vessels to rupture. Infected people shed eggs in their urine or stool. If people defecate or urinate into fresh water, the eggs hatch and become a swimming larval form that infect the snails. Humans can be treated with a drug called praziquantel, but they can also be reinfected if they have contact with the infected snails. How can the cycle be broken? One approach is to build sanitary facilities, latrines and sewage systems, and to educate people not to defecate or urinate into the water. This approach, sanitation and education, along with treating infected people, has helped many countries to reduce their incidence of schistosomiasis. We should also note that the animal schistosomes, particularly avian schistosomes, are found in many parts of the U.S., particularly in the Great Lakes. Many of the lakes in northwest Montana, including Flathead Lake, have avian schistosomes which infect ducks and other waterfowl. Humans are sometimes infected, and this causes swimmer's itch. Since humans are not the normal host for the schistosome, the larval form invades our skin and dies, causing a skin rash. The best way to avoid swimmer's itch is to avoid swimming in areas where the snail hosts are found, and vigorously rub your skin with a towel after swimming to remove the larvae before they can burrow into the skin. The next phylum of invertebrates is the molluscs. The molluscs are a large divergent group that includes the snails, slugs, oysters, clams, octopus, cuttlefish, and squid. Most of the molluscs are marine organisms, but there are some freshwater and even terrestrial members of this group. Most molluscs are soft-bodied animals and usually have a protective covering, such as a hard shell, like the hard shell of this land snail. The molluscs are characterized by having a body plan with three parts: the mantle, the visceral mass, and the foot. The mantle covers the body and produces the shell and is used for respiration and excretion. The visceral mass is the internal organs of the mollusk and includes the heart, the gonads, or reproductive organs, and the digestive tract. The foot of the mollusk is used for movement. Many mollusks feed by scraping food from surfaces by their radula, which works somewhat like a backhoe to sweep particles into the mouth. Some of the more active and intelligent members of the mollusks are shown here: the squid, the octopus, and the cuttlefish. Octopus and cuttlefish have amazing abilities to learn and remember. They are truly some of the most intelligent of the invertebrates. The octopus can even be taught to remember how to maneuver a maze. The annelids are the segmented worms that live in marine or freshwater environments or in damp soil. The annelids include the familiar earthworm, the leeches, and the marine worms, the polychaetes. The opening slide for this episode showed the marine polychaete, the Christmas tree worm, which was an inspiration for some of the alien species in the movie Avatar. Polychaetes have paddle-like feet with bristles that are used for locomotion. The earthworms, such as this giant Australian earthworm, are familiar members of the annelids and are helpful in aerating and improving soil texture. Leeches are also a member of the annelids and have been used historically for bloodletting. Leeches still are used in medicine today to improve circulation to injured tissues and to remove blood clots. The nematodes are commonly called the roundworms and can be found in soil, water, on plants, and in animals as parasites. The body of a nematode develops through a series of molts where the external body tissues are shed through ecdysis. Many nematodes are harmless, such as this free-living nematode Cnideria. However, some nematodes are parasites and cause diseases in plants or animals. The nematode Trichinella spiralis is the cause of trichinosis, a disease that affects humans and other mammals. Humans acquire infection with the trichinella worm by eating contaminated meat, such as pork, or wild game, such as bear or moose. If the meat is not thoroughly cooked, the larval forms from the infected animals can cause an intestinal infection. The larvae hatch in the intestine, grow to the adult form, and reproduce to produce more larvae. The symptoms of trichinosis usually occurs when the larval form migrate through the body to various sites, including skeletal muscles, and form cysts. People with trichinosis experience muscle pain or neurological symptoms. This disease is treatable, but it's easier to prevent infection by thoroughly cooking meats and by avoiding wild game sources such as bear. Our next phylum of invertebrates is the arthropods. The arthropod phyla includes the spiders, scorpions, ticks, mites, millipedes, centipedes, insects, crabs, lobsters, crayfish, and shrimp. Quite an impressive list. The arthropods are the most successful of all animal phyla. There are over 1 million species of arthropods, and most of these are insects. All arthropods have segmented bodies and jointed appendages. Their bodies are protected by a hard exoskeleton made of chitin, and they have a well-developed nervous system and sensory system. Like nematodes, the arthropods develop through a series of molts and may go through distinct stages seen in butterfly development. The butterfly lays eggs, which develops into a feeding larval stage. The larvae then undergoes transformation within the pupal stage to develop into an adult. Let's take a look at the diversity of arthropods. The arachnids include the scorpions, spiders, and dust mites. The myriapods are the arthropods that we find under logs and in decaying leaves, such as the millipedes and centipedes. The insects are the largest group within the arthropods, nearly 1 million known species, and include the beetles, bees, ants, flies, and the moths and the butterflies. And the crustaceans include the crabs, lobsters, barnacle, and krill. Our final group of invertebrates are the echinoderms. The term echinoderm means spiny skin, and all of the members of this group have prickly bumps or spines to protect their soft bodies. The echinoderm group includes the sea stars, the sea urchins, and the sand dollars. Nearly all of the echinoderms are found in marine environments, and they have radial symmetry, as seen in the sea urchin. One of the interesting features of the echinoderms are their water vascular systems that are used for movement, feeding, and gas exchange. The sea star shown here has a water vascular system with tube feet that are used for locomotion. Here's a question to test your knowledge of the invertebrate groups. You're walking on the beach and you find a sand dollar, the shell of a horseshoe crab, and a mussel shell. What 3 animal phyla are represented here? The sand dollar is an echinoderm, the horseshoe crab is an arthropod, and the mussel is a mollusk. To quickly review, we've discussed the Porifera, the sponges, the Cnideria, which are the jellies and the corals, the Platyhelminthes, which are the flatworms, the mollusks, which include the snails, clams, and squids. We've also looked at the annelids, or segmented worms, the nematodes, or roundworms, the arthropods, the crustaceans, the insects, and the spiders, and the echinoderms, the sea stars, and the sea urchins. This concludes this episode of BioB 160 Principles of Living Systems. Be sure to read the chapter and do the MyLabs Plus homework. Thanks, and have a great day.